Okay, we're live, Bryan. Wake
All
up.
right.
Wake up.
Happy Friday. Yeah.
Happy Friday.
It's wakey time. Wake you
Yeah.
up. um. So
So, yeah.
what are
So
we talking
today we're going to talk about outdoor Wi-Fi.
about?
It's a subject everyone wants to talk about.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of requests for outdoor Wi-Fi situations, whether it be RV park or campground, a building Wi-Fi connecting two buildings, providing Wi-Fi outside of buildings. So I guess let's get in. Which one do you want to talk about first?
There's so many. So we get calls every day.
Yeah.
Every day is an emails about just outdoor Wi-Fi, and we get them anywhere from, I want to extend, in a residential space, I want to extend Wi-Fi into my backyard, or I want to connect like an outbuilding or like my garage to, or even a barn. We get that a lot.
Yeah.
To my house network.
Yeah.
So you want to share your internet service provider's network into like your garage or into like your barn or out into like your backyard. How do you do that? Some people rely on the internal Wi-Fi to do that, which might be okay, like if you're right next to the house. But as soon as you walk away, say if you have a pool and it's kind of further away, then you're going to run into difficulties. You might be able to get a connection, but it's probably going to be really slow, frustrating. You're going to flip over to maybe cellular data at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe connecting like external buildings. Maybe start there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, all right, so we would get calls like years ago, like when Ingenious had the 2611 CB3, they'd be like, well, back when internet was like so expensive.
This is 20 years ago, by the way.
Yeah, 20 years ago, exactly. This is I want to say years ago. That's 20 years ago. So we get calls 20 years ago about, I've got an internet connection. I've got a cable modem. Like, no one else had a cable modem. And I want to provide Wi-Fi like 3 miles down the road to this like building, this barn that I can kind of see. Yeah. And like you got to be like, no, you can't do that. You need like line of sight. You need to have a tower to do anything like over a few hundred feet probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what does work is if you have line of sight to a building, maybe across the street, next door, in the back of your property. If you have a barn, like you said, and you have line of sight to it, you can use a point-to-point bridge set.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I mean we have Ingenious has multiple kind of point-to-point products that help you do that, and it's very inexpensive to do.
Yeah.
If you connect these buildings, I mean, I had my sister at one point was sharing her internet service with a couple of her neighbors, so and it was pretty inexpensive to do. But yeah, there's multiple products that do that. It used to be a lot of 2.4. Now it's really all 5 gigahertz now that they're operating on.
Yeah.
But like we have the N-Station, we have the ENS 500 that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really easy configuration. Right now we have actual pre-configured kits that you can buy them and they will link together. And then you can go and you modify them if you want to. But it's a really easy configuration, right?
Yeah, we sell lots of the N-Station kits. The N-Station 5 AC is probably the most popular one. And it's under $300 and has everything you need in that box to link two buildings.
So what I was going to say, so let's talk about how that kind of works. So like in my situation, I have my ISP modem that comes in. It's connected to, I have a router, an additional router. And then from my router, I have a switch and it's connected to an access point, for example, or multiple access points. In a lot of cases, you have a ISP modem and you have extra ports on that modem. You could either connect directly to one of those ports on the modem, or if you have a switch that's connected to the modem, you could connect directly to the switch. For example, you could have a small 4-port, 5-port switch, and you can connect one of these devices, one of these N-Stations or an ENS 500, for example, directly to the port and run Ethernet cable outdoors and mount that device outdoors, right?
Right.
That's where you start.
And you don't need power out there because the power's coming through the Ethernet and the injector's included in the box with those end station kits.
Yep. Yeah. So what Jeff is talking about is that if you mount a device on the outside of your house, for example, how are you going to supply power to that particular device? And that we're doing that through PoE, and that all of these outdoor devices come with some sort of PoE injection. Now you got to be careful. You got to not every outdoor product now comes with a PoE injector because it's assumed that you're going to use a PoE switch. But most of these devices come with a PoE injector.
Yep.
And so you can if it's compliant, you can go up to 328 feet with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's not compliant, if it's a proprietary, you're talking about 150 feet at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a lot of cable that you can run to the external part of your house.
Right.
The
So
outside of your house.
all you really need to do is drill a hole somewhere that you can run Ethernet through, and run that cable outdoors to that end station. That thing's weatherproof. You just aim it at the remote location. Do the same thing at the remote location. And those things are pre-configured. They have different modes, but if they see a router with DHCP, they automatically, I think, take the DHCP address, unless you you can actually manage those through the N-Wi-Fi app, which Ingenious has. So you can basically just plug those in and see that they're up, just using that N-Wi-Fi app, which you can get from the app stores. Now, once you have that link there, so you link those two buildings now.
Well, I'm sorry to do this to you.
Yeah, it's okay.
So you go from the ISP modem to a switch, perhaps, to a PoE injector, and then you run that cable outside to the outside of your house. Now you have this device that's sitting outside, and it's sending Wi-Fi out of this device, right?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to cover an outdoor area like a pool, you can point it towards that pool, and you can probably get definitely better connectivity at that pool.
Yeah.
But if say you have an external garage, right, or detached garage, or like a building that you're trying to workshop, or like a barn or something like that you're trying to send the signal to the barn or to this external building, you have a secondary device that basically captures that signal, right?
Yep.
Once it captures that signal in the device, you can run Ethernet cable down into like a barn, a detached garage, and then attach a switch to that side or another wireless router or an access point, whatever it may be. Now you're sending the signal, your ISP's internet services, you're sending that signal to that remote location, that remote building, right?
Right. And so like you said, you're going to need to put another access point or router inside of that remote building to provide Wi-Fi in that space. Maybe you need multiple access points depending on how big it is, right?
Yeah.
And again, we're talking that we have line of sight to this building. It's not like 3 miles down the road and with trees and houses in between. It's like It's like right across, because a lot of people are like, oh well, my friend wants this. Not so much anymore, because obviously you can get cable modems or DSL anywhere.
That's not really
not
true.
everywhere, but in most places. I know in some places still you can't. Right on the coast you can. We've had it for years. But anyway, so you'll need to put that other device inside that remote building to provide the Wi-Fi. So that end station kit's just linking the two, and then you could, like Bryan said, you put a switch or access point in the remote building to provide the Wi-Fi to the devices in there. Now, so a lot of people are like, oh, that's a little too involved. Can I just like put one on my main building and point it out there to the barn or whatever, and that you'll see signal in the barn, but those little phones and tablet devices won't be able to talk back because their radios aren't powerful enough, right? You may see like, oh, I have great signal out here. I don't need to have all this stuff, but it's not going to work well. It may barely work, right?
Yeah, you run into the problem where the client device can't communicate back.
Right. Right.
But the thing I would like to mention is that, I mentioned, from your house to like a detached garage or like a barn or some sort of outbuilding in a residential space. Now, keeping that in mind, this happens you can do this with businesses.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Large scale networks. You can share these connections as a backup. Maybe you don't want to run fiber across a street or something like that, and you want to join two buildings. You don't want to have to trench. You don't want to have to pay permits, things like that. So you can just send the signal across the street to another building, for example. And so you can do this on a commercial level, on a business level. So it's not just residential, but you can also, we've been doing it in residential space and in business cases or commercial spaces. So this works for either one. It doesn't,
Yeah. High-rise buildings are actually great because you can have, if you could have a line of sight between two of them. If you have roof access that you can mount some of these on. Now, I say roof access because you don't want to try to aim these through windows because the window material has like all kinds of properties to it, reflective properties and stuff, and you're not going to get a good connection. I mean, you might in some situations, but usually not.
We've had it. Yeah. We've had people do that in their work.
Yeah.
But they don't need the point to point is not as critical as in some cases, right? So if it's not super critical, then they don't really care that much. As long as they have connectivity and it's working 90% of the time, 95% of the time, you're okay. But if you're looking for more, 100% of the time, then you don't.
You need to have these things outside. Don't try to put them inside. Yeah. You're not going to get the same. You're not going to get a good result all the time with that, or any of the time. The other thing I wanted to mention, last thing about point to point, is so these things, these end stations, they have multiple modes. So they can run in. I believe they're configured in WDS bridge mode when they come out of the box, right?
I believe so. Yeah,
I believe so. So that, and basically that makes it a transparent bridge so that you won't have problems with devices on the other side of the bridge. Like if it's not a transparent, like some services like DHCP may not work properly. So always keep that in mind. That's why we configure these in WDS to start. Now there is a couple other modes. Like there's a WDS access point mode that you can put these things in where they'll basically bridge to each other. If you had them both in WDS AP mode, they'd both bridge to each other and they'd broadcast SSID that stations like phones and laptops can connect to. So you could try that mode too. It's a little, be a little more advanced, and you'd have to be in the signal range of those units, which are very directional. So that doesn't always work. It's something you could try maybe if you're going to be sitting in between them or right next to where the end station's mounted in front of them. You may be able to use that WDS AP mode without putting another access point, at that location.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
So we've seen that work too, but it's limited and it's very hard to describe exactly where that's going to work. It's not going to work in back of the unit, like inside the building. It's going to work maybe in front of it if it's close enough to the ground and you're within 100 degrees of the unit, right?
Yeah.
So that's something you can try too. And then if it doesn't give you the coverage you want, then you basically just put it back into WDS bridge mode and put another access point either inside the building, or you could put an outdoor access point to broadcast that signal around. But that's something we like to discourage. We don't want people. We rather have you run cable if you're gonna be providing outdoor Wi-Fi, because there could it's very hard to set up the access points and maintain the bridges both perfectly. You know what I mean, in an outdoor environment, because they could interfere with each other and other things.
You're just adding you're adding layers of difficulty and layers of troubleshooting steps that you have to go through.
Yeah.
I mean, we can identify it pretty quickly, but if you if you're kind of on your own, it could get really difficult. So you just got to, you're right. You have to be careful. We do recommend running cable
to outdoor Wi-Fi situations. So let's talk a bit about outdoor Wi-Fi now. So let's say you started talking in the home use, like someone has a pool or an outdoor area they want to cover. They could use something like the ECW 260, right?
Yeah. That's the one I recommend. The ECW 260 is the AP of choice for me. It's 11AX, or Wi-Fi 6, I should say.
Yes.
Access point. It has plenty of output power. So what I mean by that, it will give you pretty really good range, really good connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
But that leads us into kind of the things that we run into that, hey, let me just turn this thing up and let it broadcast out. And you got to be careful with that as well. But yeah, that the 260 is probably one of the best access points, outdoor access points that we have. Yeah, because of just the design. It's an IP67, so it's outdoor rated, high outdoor rating. So yeah, that's the best one out there.
And so you could mount it on like the side of the house, let's say, and you know you'll get out maybe 150 feet from the access point. You mount that way, or if you put it on a pole, you can get 300 feet around it. Because they're omnidirectional antennas. So if you have the option of mounting it on a pole, you're probably better off like standing away from the house. And again, you can run 300 feet of Ethernet out to that pole location or whatever, and extend it up, and that's going to give you your best coverage. You put it against the house, you're going to kind of lose half of that signal because it's omnidirectional.
Yep.
But in most cases, that's still enough. It's still enough for what most people want in their backyard. Just to, just because it's easier, I would mount it on the house. It's not a problem.
Yeah, it's easier to do it that way. It will actually penetrate into the house as well. Quite honestly, I mean, it's like there's enough power there that it will, depending on the room, where the device is on your house, on the other side, within your house, you're going to see signal. You're definitely going to see signal, and within the room, you're going to see really good signal, I'm sure. But yeah, that will serve most homes, the backyard of the home, and you'll have really good connectivity there. The other thing I would probably mention is, you want to mount that at a particular height, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want it so that it has a line of sight to whoever's using it, but not necessarily super high or anything like that. It's not, you're not like trying to, get to the moon with it or anything. It's like you want to have it so that it's closest to the people using it, but also it has a line of sight to them. So yeah, you'd probably want to put it at like 10 feet or something. People don't mess with it, and you have a line of sight to wherever people are sitting or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So as long as the device you're using, like your phone or your laptop, can physically see the access point. Yeah. I mean, unless it's really, if you can't see it because it's too far away, then you might have problems. But as long as you have that line of sight, your connection should be really good.
Yeah, and even like outdoor bars and things like that. Remember the bar in Ocean City? Like they had just the one outdoor access point from Genius, and it was covering like the whole bar area with like, and it wasn't even a very high end one, but it was there's probably like 100 people in that area, and it was working fine.
That's a good example, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about businesses now. Like, so we've been seeing a lot of businesses and schools that are using outdoor Wi-Fi too. Because, the COVID situation, they want people out in the parking lots maybe, to use the connectivity for meetings and things like that. So, I know we're both working on a couple projects now that they're looking to provide outdoor Wi-Fi. And basically, some of these are like, they're getting into higher density. Like they're saying, there could be hundreds of people out there. So they're basically, maybe the building has existing Wi-Fi inside, and now they want to beef up that outdoor Wi-Fi because they're really starting to use it.
Yeah, they're starting to use it, and now they're seeing a need for it. Yeah. Right now, everybody's starting to kind of go back to somewhat normal, schools specifically. But they do see that now. They see the need. We've had schools early on kind of come to us and say we need outdoor Wi-Fi. Yep. But now a lot of people are seeing the importance of outdoor Wi-Fi and high capacity outdoor Wi-Fi. So so what do you do in those particular cases? And it's very similar to what we're talking about with just in residential spaces. You're putting these devices outdoors and you're creating clear line of sight from your audience or your students, for example, and your staff to the actual access point itself, and it's going to provide better connectivity that way.
Yeah. We're seeing like, people. I know we talked about mounting on poles, but it's way easier to mount on buildings. So we're seeing like, a building has a parking lot that's so far away from the building, but so they're mounting the access points on the building, the outside of the building, like in different locations, closest to the parking lot, but still may be a few hundred feet away, but it's going to be fine. Like they can probably get signal, line of sight to 300 feet away from those access points.
Yeah, in some cases, even that situation, you're providing better connectivity than what they're getting at home in some cases.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I mean, even so with the ECW 260, it's 11AX. The speeds that you will get over a lot of people are pretty good in regards to, hey, I got to sit in my car and connect from the parking lot. Um, they're going to get pretty good speeds, pretty good connectivity. They'll be able to do pretty much anything. They could probably watch a video.
Yeah, they can pretty much do anything, especially with that one. I did a review on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. People can see kind of what it looks like and the testing I was able to do. But yeah, you'll get hundreds of megabits per second, pretty far away from the access point, right? So, and that one also has multi-gig Ethernet, 2.5 gig, and so it'll handle, if you have these like faster connections now with these buildings, and you have multi-gigabit switches. Like what's the Ingenious multi-gig ECW 2512 FP?
The 2512 FP.
2512 FP, yeah. So if you have those types of switches, you're going to really start to use those faster internet connections now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're going to take advantage of what you're paying for, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So, and we've been saying, like, if you have a connection over a gigabit, then, or even a gigabit, then the multi-gigabit switches start to make sense.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you kind of see that on just within your network. You're seeing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The benefits of it. So.
Yeah, you're seeing the Wi-Fi 6 access points and the multi-gigabit switches make sense when you have a connection over a gigabit. So that's definitely something to look into when you're doing the outdoor Wi-Fi too. Yep. All right. Anything else we need to talk about for outdoor Wi-Fi?
I think when this kind of subject popped up because we were talking with somebody and it was about output power, right?
Oh yeah, exactly, yeah. So
did you talk about that?
Yeah. So I mean, output power, it's good. It can be good and bad, but I would probably leave it on auto most of the time. These access points are smart enough that they're not, basically you don't want it to crank the power up for clients that are really close, because then the ones that are really far away are going to get those transmissions too, you know what I mean? So you probably want to keep it in auto so the access point's doing some sort of intelligent power settings based on the connections that it's serving up.
Yeah. Yeah, because it has to serve more than one client, and those clients could be at different distances, so it's going to auto adjust to wherever they're located, right?
Yeah, especially when you're in a multi-access point situation. You don't want to be flooding power over to to the location of the next access point and then some, right? You want to have like a 50% overlap or something like that. So you want to have the power cranked down where you don't lose connectivity, but your power's dropping off by at least like 50% before it gets into where the next AP is reaching.
Yeah.
That way you'll have good roaming naturally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the situation that we typically run into is that all of these access points can be configured or programmed with, and you can set their output power,
right?
The radio output power, how much it's going to transmit out, and you can set that really, really high. You can set it really, really low, or you can put it in auto, which Jeff was talking about, and that's what we're suggesting is auto. In a scenario like outdoor, that's probably the best way to do it. The problem that we run into is that you have like an iPhone or a Samsung phone or a laptop. What happens when you turn the power way, way, way up? The phone will be able to see the signal because the access point can communicate to it. So the phone sees the signal, but when it tries to transmit back, it's not able to transmit back. It's just too far away to transmit back. So because it's set on it has smaller antennas, it has the output power is going to be lower, and the reason for that is there's power saving mode on the phones. They need to be more efficient, things like that. Whereas an access point, its sole job is to broadcast out, and so you can set these things up where they're broadcasting really, really far. But again, you're dealing with clients that have individuals that have phones that can't transmit back. They can't speak back. So you just got to be really careful when you're setting the output power. So auto is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
At least start there and then adjust from there if you need to adjust. That's typically what we do. We go to auto power, for most cases. And then if we have to fine tune, and what I mean by fine tune, we have to maybe like adjust the power down. Typically, it's adjusting the power down, not adjusting the power up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's
think about it in that parking lot situation where you have like 3 access points out in the parking lot, and the people are driving in. They're going to connect to that first one that they pass by, right? And then, so let's say they go somewhere else in the parking lot that's closer to another access point. They're going to, if the power's up too high, they're never going to roam over to the closer one. They're going to stay in that first one, and that's a problem now. That you're not using your resources efficiently then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the client device, like a laptop or a phone, that device makes the decision
Right.
to roam.
Right.
So if it's still locked into that first access point, say you have 3 access points, you walk by the first access point, you lock into that access point, your client device locks into the access point, it will hang on for dear life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to disconnect if it's seeing a certain amount of signal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's client dependent. There's some mechanisms that we can do on the access point controller side to influence it to roam, but you can't make it. It's really depending on the client. When it's going to roam, the signal, the noise that it's seeing. And so, I mean, that's another good reason to leave the APs at auto or reduce the power if necessary, and put more access points, not less. Like people want to save money and just put 1, but. Or 2, but you have to make sure that that you put the right number of outdoor access points for the coverage and capacity that you'll be serving. And the one last thing, people they're never really sure what the capacity is. They're like, oh, well, it's not going to be that many. It's not going to be that many. Then all of a sudden, you have like a sports stadium situation where there's like thousands of people out there and you have 1 access point.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, here's a small disclaimer. We're talking about we're talking about output power. Obviously, there's other settings within the radio that you would have to set, like channels and so on. So we haven't really talked about that, but output power is one of those questions that we get a lot, because a lot of people go, oh, let me turn up the output power, let me get the signal way far out there, and I should be good to go. And that's not true, really.
No, that's not the main thing. And yeah, I mean, it used to be you'd put a giant antenna and try to send the signal out as far as you could, but people didn't realize. I mean, that's fine as long as you have a giant antenna on the other side, not somebody on their iPhone trying to connect.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that doesn't work. You really have to put and these days with Wi-Fi 6 and even Wi-Fi 5, I mean, upgrading antennas really isn't something you want to do, because these outdoor APs are pretty much spec'd out to be as efficient as they can with the stock antennas on there. You don't really want to do some weird setup, putting larger antennas, high gain or Yagi. Somebody asked me about a Yagi antenna the other day. These things really aren't used that much anymore.
Yeah.
Because one, there's so many radio streams now. You have multiple radio chains. You have to put 8 of these antennas on, aimed in the same direction, make sure everything's right. It's not going to work out.
Yeah, you just got to be careful with that. I mean, some of the guys out there know what they're doing, so they're able to do that. So in indoor Wi-Fi, you actually use it in high density situations, like a flat panel, like if not in a stadium, but like in like a church, for example. If you have a lot of people in a room, and you're trying to isolate areas, you can use flat panels, but
it's not done much anymore, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's good. So that's our take on outdoor Wi-Fi. We could talk about it all day, I'm sure. But if you guys have any questions, ask in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe for more help with Wi-Fi.